This evening's talk is mostly a story that's aimed at helping us to pay attention to what's happening to this planet, to the earth, and to its inhabitants. It's a really big topic, so I'm just going to take a quick slice at it and then move right directly into the story. This is for the sake to really get at this fundamental equality of all beings on the planet. All beings on the planet. So I start with a really brief story of a scientist, Lewis Thomas, who wrote several books years and years ago, decades ago. One of the ones he's most known for is The Lives of a Cell. And in it, he describes our planet as a living organism. And you have to remember that this was long before this was a common concept. This was a novel idea when he was writing this. And he says, after a lot of study and reflection, he arrived at the insight that the whole planet is like a giant living cell whose parts are all linked in symbiosis. And he describes the miraculous achievement of the atmosphere as being the world's largest membrane. He finds it so astonishing that the earth is actually alive. He is struck by the amazing beauty and the exuberance of the earth in contrast to the barren, cratered moon, for example. He likened the earth to an organized, self-contained being, a live creature full of information and marvelously skilled. And of course, we know with many, many scientific discoveries since then that the earth is indeed a living being. It's not inert matter or an inanimate object. And some human tribes, beings, individuals on this planet have called the planet a Mother Earth, not because it's a person, of course, but because we can see her with that concept as a mother who has given birth to millions of different species, including ours, human beings. You could say that the Mother Earth is a generous one who embraces and provides for us all. And Thich Nhat Hanh has said that if you look deeply, you will see that Mother Earth is not out there somewhere, but you can find Mother Earth within you, just as your biological mother who gave birth to you is also within you. Elements of earth, air, fire, and water. He goes on to say that we can take refuge in the earth as our original mother, whatever nationality or culture or family that we belong to. And with each step, for example, we can feel the solidity of the ground beneath our feet. And when we are truly in touch with the earth, we can feel the supportive embrace. It may be difficult to remember that or acknowledge it in the midst of some of the events that we are witnessing now. But you might remember that the Buddha, on the verge of his enlightenment, touched the earth with his hand and asked her to bear witness to his awakening. And we too can be like the Buddha. We can, in difficult moments when we're feeling fragile or vulnerable, we can breathe the earth's air and touch the earth as our witness. One of the things we are beginning to see more clearly is that when we perpetrate violence toward the earth or toward any of the species on the planet, we are in fact being violent to ourselves at the same time. So one of our challenges is to figure out how it is that we can proceed to protect all beings, those who walk, swim, crawl, fly, And all the two-legged ones who are constituted just like us. Skin, bone, blood, brain, sensation, thought, emotion, but whom we often see as completely separate because of ideological differences. When we recognize the virtues and the talents of the earth and all beings on it, we can feel more connected to the earth, and love emerges in our hearts. Only love can show us how to live more harmoniously with nature, with each other, and just possibly save us from the devastating effects of human greed and destruction. Thich Nhat Hanh has also said, the earth is not just the environment. The earth is us, every one of us. Everything depends on whether we have this insight or not. When you see that the earth is us, there is no separation between species. Care and compassion can be born in your heart when you see the connection, the no separation. He says that when we walk more gently on the earth, when we see the earth in this manner, we walk more gently, we treat the earth and all beings on it with greater reverence. We have an inclination to protect rather than harm any of the myriad forms of life that earth has given birth to. So how do we cultivate this falling in love with this seeing no separation between us and the planet, us and all species on the planet? So one way might be the direct experience of the planet. So we could, for example, tonight go out, go barefoot on the grass, look up at the stars, pause to feel the earth, really feel the earth beneath your feet, breathe, look up at the stars, and sense your place in the galaxy here. Or, as I think it was George Washington Carver who said, you could study the small things in your own dooryard, a plant, a tree, an ant, or any square foot of soil, getting up very close to it. Or sit by a stream or the ocean listening, or feel the sun, the wind, the rain on your body, not unlike the fire, the earth, the air, the water elements of earth and all living bodies. Another way is that we can listen to the stories, each other's stories, or read fiction and nonfiction of times and places that we yet do not know about. Some of us are doing that now to learn more fully the comprehensive story of slavery and racism in the United States, particularly, and what it really means to be white. Or we could listen to an ancient tale from an oral tradition that reveals a truth that is almost too great to be limited by fact. Stories, read or heard, sometimes allow truth to be felt and understood in a way that isn't entirely logical, perhaps, or rational, but it appeals to something intuitive within us. So in a moment I'm going to read a story to you from a collection of Jataka tales, and the Jatakas are based on ancient folk and oral traditions, many of which came out of the Hindu tradition of India. And they're, for the large part, they're telling the story of previous lives of the Buddha. The purpose of the Jatakas is to show us how the Buddha lived many, many lives with the goal of becoming enlightened, waking up. So in these stories, he's born or reborn in human form, in superhuman form, and often in animal form. But always the theme throughout every story is there's some quality, some virtue that's being extolled, that he's embodying in this human, superhuman, or animal form. And it's really just a way of many, many traditions have to teach ethics long before literacy was common. So tonight I'm going to read one of the best beloved Jataka tales, and it's called the Banyan Deer. And many of you have heard this before, but if you've not, that's great. And if you have heard it, just see if you can listen with new ears tonight. Just a little bit of background. Banyan in this case means a fig tree. It's common in tropical climates. You may know that the fig seed is dropped by birds onto a branch of an existing tree, and that seed sends roots downward towards the earth. And what happens eventually is that these aerial roots become larger and larger, and they begin to go laterally, and they encapsulate whatever the original tree that they sprang from, is strangling it. So there's the term a strangling fig that can actually encroach upon and kill the host tree. But what happens then is once that tree is no longer there, these extensive aerial roots that have gone out in lateral directions form a kind of forest, a kind of protective cave that shelters animals. So the banyan deer refers to the fact that this deer lived in such a forest and probably gained shelter in such a place. So get comfortable, sit back, relax, close your eyes if you want, and listen to the story of the banyan deer. There was once, long, long ago, a deer who was the color of gold. His eyes were round like jewels, his horns white as silver, his mouth red like a flower, his hooves bright and hard. He had a large body and a fine tail. He lived in a forest, and he was the king of a herd of 500 banyan deer. Now at that time, a new king, one who loved hunting, came to power. As soon as the sun rose, this king would mount his horse and lead his men on a furious chase through the fields and forests. Shooting his arrows madly, he would not leave off until the sun set. And then the wagons rolled back to the palace behind him, filled with deer, boar, rabbit, pheasant, and monkey, with leopard, bear, tiger, and lion. And the king was happy. His people, however, were not pleased. Fields were ruined by the royal hunt. Farmers and merchants, forced to leave off their work to beat the jungles and drive the hidden beast toward the waiting king, saw crops wither and businesses fail. The king's own affairs of state lay unattended. Determined to bring this to an end, the people devised a simple plan. They built a stockade deep in the forest. We'll just trap a herd, or two maybe, of deer in the stockade, they said. Then the king can hunt all he likes to his heart's content, but we won't have to leave our fields and our shops. Let him be happy. So the stockade was built, and 2 herds of deer were driven within its walls. The gates were closed, and the delicate animals, charging and wheeling in frantic circles, sought some way out, but there was none. Exhausted, they stood trembling, awaiting their fate. The men left happily to tell the king of their success. One of the herds that had been trapped was the herd of banyan deer. The banyan deer walked among his herd. Sunlight played on his many branched antlers. His eyes shone and his muzzle was wet. The sky is blue overhead and green grass grows at our feet, he told the others. Do not give up. Where there is life, there is hope. I will find a way. And so he strove to ease their fears. Soon the king arrived to view the newly captured herds. He strung his bow in preparation for the hunt. Noticing the two deer kings below, he said, "The leaders of both herds are magnificent. No one is to shoot them. They shall be spared." Then, standing on the wall, looking down over the stockade, he sent his arrows flying into the milling herds. The deer became frantic. Racing wildly, they injured one another with horns and hooves as they sought to escape the deadly rain of arrows. And so it went. Every few days the king returned to the stockade with his men, and every few days more deer were killed and wounded by arrows. Others were injured in the desperate attempt to escape. The king of the banyan deer met with the leader of the other herd. "Brother," he said with a shake of his antlered head, "we are trapped. I've tried every possible way, but all exits are barred against us. Our subjects suffer unbearably. When the arrows fly, many are hurt just trying to stay alive. Let us hold a lottery. Each day, all the deer, one day from your herd, the next day from mine, will pick a straw. Then the one deer on whom the lottery falls can stand before the king to be shot. In this way, many can be saved from needless injury and pain." And the leader of the other herd agreed. The next day, when the king and his courtiers looked down over the stockade wall, they found one trembling deer standing directly below them. "What's this?" said the king. "Oh, I see. These are noble deer indeed. They have chosen that one deer alone shall die rather than they all suffer from our hunt. Those deer kings have wisdom." A heaviness descended on the king's heart. "We shall accept their terms," he announced. "We shall shoot only the one deer that stands below." Unstringing his bow, he descended from the stockade wall and rode back in silence to the palace. That night the king tossed and turned, a radiant deer prancing through his dreams. One day, the lot fell to a pregnant doe. She went to her king, the leader of the other herd, and said, "I promise to fulfill the lottery once my fawn is born, but if I go now, both I and my unborn child will die. Spare me till then, sire. I do not ask for myself, but for the sake of the one that is soon to be born." But her king said, "The law is the law. The lottery has fallen on you, and you must die. There are no exceptions. Justice demands that you go." In desperation, she ran to the banyan deer and begged for aid. He listened quietly, observing her with wide and gentle eyes. "You are right," said the banyan deer. "The terms of the lottery require that only one need die. Therefore, it is right that you be spared until your fawn is born. I will see that that is done." Overjoyed, the grateful doe bowed and bounded away. The banyan deer king walked calmly in great dignity through his browsing herd. There was no other he would send to take her place. He had spared her. He himself would replace her. How could it be otherwise? The others watched as he moved among them. His great curving antlers and strong shoulders, his shining eyes and sharp black hooves all reassured and comforted them. Never had their banyan king let them down. Never had he abandoned them. If there was a way, he would find it. If there was a chance to save another, he would take it. Not once had he lorded it over them. He was a king indeed, and his whole herd took comfort in his presence. The courtiers were waiting with drawn bows atop the stockade. When they saw that the deer king himself had come and that he would not leave, they sent for the king. "Banyan King," said the human king when he arrived, "have I not freed you from my hunt?" "Great king," replied the banyan deer, "what ruler can be free if the people suffer? Today a doe with fawn begged for my aid. The lottery, having fallen on her, condemned both her and her unborn fawn to death. Yet the terms of the lottery require that only one shall die, so I shall take her place. The lottery shall be fulfilled. This is my right and my duty as a king." A stone rolled from the king's heart. "Noble banyan deer," he said, "you are right. A king must care for the least of his subjects. It is a lesson I have been long in learning, but today, through your intended sacrifice, you've made it clear. So I shall give you a gift, a payment of a teacher's fee. As you freed the doe and her fawn, so you and your herd shall be freed. That's my promise. You shall not be hunted again. Go now and live in peace." But the banyan deer said, "Great king, this is a noble gift indeed. Yet how can I leave? If I depart with my herd, the remaining deer will suffer all the more. Your hunters shall shoot only at them. A rain of arrows will fall upon them. While I desire safety for my people above all things, I cannot buy it at the cost of increasing the suffering of others. So no, I cannot go and live in peace." The human king was stunned. "Banyan deer," he asked, "would you really risk your herd's freedom to benefit others?" "I would," answered the banyan deer, "and I will. Think of the anguish of those others, great king. Imagine their sufferings, and then let them too go free." The king paused and pondered, and at last he lifted his head and smiled. "How can I refuse you? You shall have your wish. The other herd too shall go free. Now you may depart in peace." But the banyan deer answered, "Alas, great king, I cannot. What of all the other wild, four-footed creatures? Like them, I have lived a life surrounded by many dangers. How could I live in peace, knowing the terrors that they must yet endure? Your hunt will fall entirely on them. Their suffering shall increase. I beg you, mighty king, have pity. Can there be peace for me unless they too are free?" Again, the human king was astonished. Yet slowly the truth of the banyan deer's words grew clear to him. "It's true," he said. "There's no real peace unless it benefits all. Let it be known then throughout my realm, never again shall any four-footed creature be slain. All are freed from my hunt. Rabbit, boar, bear, lion, leopard, tiger, deer, all. Never again shall any fall to my huntsman's arrows. Now, my teacher, have you at last found peace?" But the banyan deer said, "Great king, I have not. For now, I think of the sweet singers, those defenseless ones of the air, the birds, great king, the birds. They shall be surrounded by a net of danger and death. Stones and arrows shall greet them wherever they fly. They shall fall like rain from the skies. They shall know such suffering as can hardly be imagined. Great king, let them too go free." "Great one," said the human king, "you drive a hard bargain, and you are determined, it seems, to make farmers of us all. But yes, I shall free the birds. On this you have my word. They shall fly freely throughout my realm. No one shall hunt them. They shall build their nests, sing their songs in peace. Now are you satisfied? Are you at last at peace?" "Great king," said the banyan deer, "in whom generosity overflows, think now of those silent ones of your realm. The fish, my lord. If I do not speak for them, who will? Hooks, nets, and spears shall soon be poised above them. Can I abide in peace while they alone face that torment? It's impossible. Great king, I beg you, spare them as well. Until then, I cannot be at peace." "Noble being," said the human king, tears trickling down his cheeks. Compassionate one, never before have I been moved to think in such a way. But yes, I agree, the fish are of my kingdom, and so they too must be free. They shall swim freely. No one shall kill them again. Now, all of you assembled, hear my words and see that they are posted throughout the land from this day forth. All beings shall be recognized as my own dear subjects. None shall be trapped, hunted, or killed. See that this is fulfilled. Now tell me, noble one, he said, turning to the banyan deer, are you at peace? Birds flew across the blue sky and perched, singing in the trees. Deer grazed calmly on the green grass. Yes, said the banyan deer, now I'm at peace. A tear trickled from his eye, a tear of pure joy. In that tear was reflected all the world. And he leapt like a fawn, leapt up for joy, sheer joy. He had saved them all. Gathering his herd, he thanked the king and departed back into the green forest. Later, the king had a pillar of stone set on the spot. Carved upon it was the figure of a deer, encircled with these words, homage to the noble banyan deer, compassionate teacher of kings. And then he too lived on, caring wisely for all things. So let's sit for a few moments. Thank you for your practice.